You are now tuned into Flipping the Birds, a Philly Sports Network podcast.
What's going on, Eagles fans? Welcome one, welcome all to another episode of Flipping the Birds.
He's into the end zone. Touchdown, Eagles.
Breaking news, the Cowboys are actually trying to contend with the Eagles in the NFC East. As you guys may see that they made a trade right before our podcast. Jerry Jones is actually trolling us. But on the other hand, what's going on, Eagles fans? Welcome all to episode 164 of Flipping the Birds. I'm Brian Cameron alongside Eric Reese and Zach Chavalella. How are you feeling, gentlemen?
Still feeling last night a little bit, but good morning, everybody. I'm probably going to have a coffee in the middle of this podcast, but
I beat you to
there
it.
you go. See, Brian, you already got a coffee at the beginning of the podcast, so this is going to be perfect. Breakfast and birds, man.
I feel like that should be a thing, right?
And birds. It should be a thing. We should make that as consistent as we can. I counter to Eric, had a slightly more early start to my day. Already got the old breakfast in and already on the coffee. So Eric, you're really the only one who's falling behind on the coffee game.
That's literally fine. I woke up. What is it? 10:07. Literally almost an hour, like 50 minutes ago. I woke up and I realized. I look at my girlfriend. I'm just like, I have a podcast to do in 50 minutes, and she just looked at me and just like didn't say anything. She just looked and gave me like this weird, like, why are you telling me this first thing in the morning? I don't know.
Do you want to come on the podcast, babe?
She's just looking at me, dude. Like anything that sounds like podcast, she's like, I'm not interested.
I'm not buying what you're selling, Eric. Oh man, but it's been an incredible week, right? I mean, free agency kicked off. As always, Eagles start late. Eagles fans, they ridicule them, they go crazy. Monday was the Jason Kelce, Brandon Graham reunion. But Tuesday was the fireworks. The Eagles invested very big money in the cornerback position. They signed James Bradbury to a 3-year deal worth, if I'm not mistaken, is what, $32 million? I could get as high as 48.
Sounds about right.
And then after that, they made a bold move, in my opinion, right? Rashad Penny, running back. No Miles Sanders coming back, but Rashad Penny is a very, very interesting piece. We'll go back to James Bradbury in a second because, Eagles fans are accustomed to him, right? But Rashad Penny in this offense, with this offensive line, we know he hasn't been able to stay healthy for majority of his career, but he's been as efficient as possible when on the field. The guy is literally just a rolling bowling ball. Like, nobody could take him down. I mean, how do you guys feel about the signing?
I like how cheap the group of running backs are because it sounds like, and I think if I have at least some close to the math, what was it? Boston Scott, Kenny Gainwell,
1 mil, I think it is.
So yeah, so is that about what Miles Sanders is making now, like per year? So it's everything's literally what Miles Sanders has been making, but it's 3 players instead of 1. Like I mean, you can't complain with that kind of cap efficiency there. You just hope Penny stays healthy. That's really it. Like it's the only thing that anybody's ever said about Penny is like, can he stay healthy? If he can stay healthy, then I do think that we do have a decent 3-headed monster, and I think that Gainwell can do what Miles Sanders did, and Penny is going to do what Miles Sanders didn't do, which is hit the hole, right down the middle. Because Miles Sanders can break a decent run, but it was the least physical route traveled, I think, most of the time when it was Miles Sanders. And I would like to see Penny catching out of the backfield too. I would like to have a starting running back that can do both.
Yeah, I think it's going to be very nice to see Penny added to this rotation of backs. You talked about the contract; it's amazing. He's making less than Boston Scott, which is, I mean, like for the value. And I love Boston Scott, but for the value, that's insane. I mean, we're talking about a guy who, granted, it's only over 15 games, but he averaged over 6 yards a carry in each of the past 2 seasons, 5.7 throughout his entire career. Like there is talent to be had there. You're right. The biggest question mark is around whether or not he can stay healthy. But I think behind this offensive line, he's got a much better shot at it. Hopefully, the Eagles training staff makes some improvements over what's been going on in Seattle. And I have a pretty good feeling about it. He's not going to be, the featured back. There's going to be, and maybe he'll snap Gainwell and Scott individually, but this is a committee. That's what it is. And I think that he's going to fit perfectly into that. I love having 3 talented backs at such a small price point. So I feel great about that, honestly, going forward for the Eagles.
I like it a lot. I mean, to me, like it screams LeGarrette Blunt, right? And when I say LeGarrette Blunt, I mean the body build, the physicality. I think Rashad Penny is going to do well in this offense, but you said it right there, like if he's able to stay healthy, and I don't think he's a feature back, but I think this plays into what Philly's been doing for the last 2 seasons, right? When it comes to the draft, they get these guys like you have a Javon Hargrave, you drafted Jordan Davis, you have a TJ Edwards, you have a Nakobe Dean, and we know they're kind of enamored with and forgive me if I say this wrong, Jahmyr Gibbs is he out of Alabama, which could be the guy going it's in their minds, right? Second round, you could risk and high risk, high reward, right? If you don't get them, then you still have a good, decent running back waiting in the wings. But I like it. I definitely like that move. I definitely love the James Bradbury move. I was big on that train last season where I feel like he'll kind of come here, 1-year deal, prove it, sign him to the extension, and then you extend Slay as well. But just keeping the continuity in that secondary, I think is huge. Like it's super key. Yeah, Bradbury. How did you guys feel about the the fireworks that were caused with the slave release, and then the slave retain, and then I mean it was a wild Wednesday.
It was the most gangster thing Howie Roseman did. It was like, yo, go check, go seek out a trade. But I really want to stay in Philly. We would like to be in Philly. This is the offer. Can we get a little bit more? This is the offer. You go on media and you say like, dude, we'll just straight up drop the guy. And, obviously you're not getting the offer. So next thing you know, in the 11th hour, yeah, I'll take the offer. He didn't budge, and he got everything he wanted for 3 more years?
Yeah. Technically it's 2 years, but yeah, 3.
With the option, right?
With the option.
Okay. So it's definitely the most gangster thing. Like, I mean, I like Slay. I think that, he's hasn't, like, I know some people were like, well, what did he do last year? Like, he wasn't targeted for like a handful of games in a row last year. So that's a lot. That, when you're that much of a threat that no quarterback wants to really throw in your direction, that's what he did. He halved the field for some quarterbacks last year. And, I'm, having him around. And again, you're right. It doesn't mean that he's going to be for the full 3, but I mean, his production on the field makes you kind of wish he was.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's definitely impressive what Howie Roseman did. I think that there was a little more of a mutual agreement than than maybe you put out there. But I think it was kind of all right, well, here, like, everybody wins a little bit, but you are for sure right. Like, what Slay wanted was not out there. That's is what it is. That's perfectly within his right to bet on him and look for the top offer for himself. He went out, he wanted, reportedly, this is not coming directly from Slay, but reportedly wanted 3 guaranteed years, which for a 32-year-old cornerback is unheard of. So, I mean, for any cornerback, it's really unheard of. But to not find that, I don't think that was really surprising to anyone, including Slay's representation. So to stay in Philadelphia, to rework a new deal, I think that's kind of where all of this was heading from the start, obviously. It's just we had to take one of the craziest routes to get there, between Slay saying 3 guaranteed years and, Eagles saying that, well, we're, go look for a trade. Oh, no, we're going to cut you post June 1st. Like, all that stuff, like, absolutely insane, but all the while, like, it was, I think it was always going to work itself out. I don't know if there was ever any real flight risk in Slay, although it absolutely seemed like it, to all of us on the outside. So I'm glad it worked out. Obviously he did have a little bit of a step back in the second half of last season, but I think that's something that he can recover from. I still think he's one of the top corners, in the game around. So to have him and Bradbury, especially with this unsure safety situation in Philadelphia right now, I think that's key to have.
And I think they're absolutely right with that. And I think a key thing that a lot of people overlooking, right? We'll get to to this guy in the next topic, right? CJ Gardner-Johnson put out there that, when Jonathan Gannon was being interviewed, like, you didn't put us in position to make plays, right? And I kind of feel like it was like that for Darius. And I'm sorry, for Slay. I feel like it was like that for James Bradbury as well. Like, we're
His
gonna
friends
see.
call him Darius.
Yeah, you better
I
not
mean,
call him that.
I don't want to brag, but I don't want to brag live on the pod. Um, but I think that's key for the secondary, right? And then it just again having a continuity. Like, we haven't had that in Philly in so long, and in so long we haven't had 2 top 10 cornerbacks in the league. Like, say what what you want about the Gannon's defense. Like, yes, it was historic, it was great, but it didn't do the job at the end of the day, right? It didn't close out the season with a Super Bowl win. Sean Desai is in here, a new defense, new scheme, guy who's out there to prove that his time in Chicago was a fluke, and you have 2 of the top cornerbacks on your end. I think it's a phenomenal move. We'll talk about the players that were lost on the defense a little bit later on in the pod. But another player that came back, right? Fletcher Cox. This is a guy that when I was on Birds 365, I mentioned that it would be great if Philly could keep Brandon Graham and Fletcher Cox here to retire. Some people said I was crazy for that Fletcher Cox was gone, and here he is, another year. And we have 3 Eagles that are going to retire with their whole career being in Philadelphia, and it's phenomenal. And then even Darius Slay putting out there that he wants to retire in Philly, wants to retire as an Eagle. Like, it just speaks volumes to the organization that is compared to what it was.
I think it speaks volumes, kind of about, the way that I laid it out earlier wasn't necessarily the most accurate. It just sounds the most fun. But I think it speaks volumes about how much that, negotiations between Slay and Howie, and how Slay decided, he wanted to ultimately stay in Philly, because you're right. Like, Philadelphia is a destination. It's a destination where players want to come to, potentially turn Philadelphia into a city where you can win a championship. You can make that run. It's, sort of like how Tampa Bay was treated for a little bit. But yeah, I mean, as far as, Fletcher Cox, I was a little surprised. I don't think, I still think 10 million is expensive. For Fletcher Cox, I know he turned down more money elsewhere, and like, I think I would have, if I was Howie, I think I would have let him go elsewhere. I know that would have been very unpopular, like you were saying. He's going to be, probably retiring the Philadelphia Eagle throughout his entire career. But yeah, I don't know. Like, he picked it up, I guess, towards the end of the second half last year, but I kind of am a little weary about if it was a little bit of a product of his teammates around him versus I don't know. Like, I think 10 million for Cox was a little bit expensive. I think that money could have been wiggled down a little bit, because in my mind, I'm thinking, I know Howie is a cap genius, but I can't get rid of the thought in my head where it's like, I want every millions of dollars available. So when that Jalen Hurts contract comes and needs to be extended, we can throw it out there, because that's what it's going to be. It's going to be so expensive for that quarterback.
Well, yeah, but it's a 1-year deal for Fletch, and the one pushback that I want to bring up is kind of like the converse argument for not signing Javon Hargrave, right? So if you look at the price points for both Fletcher Cox and Javon Hargrave, and Javon was a great pass rusher for the Eagles, 11 sacks last year. We know he's not the best run defender, right? Like, that's just what we know about Javon Hargrave. So, for him to gain that huge deal that he did with the 49ers, that alone, I was pretty okay with. So you're telling me that you're bringing back a guy who is well respected in the locker room, still produced 7 sacks in a rotation role last year in Fletch, just on a 1-year deal. Like, I feel a little bit better about that, because the thing is, you don't have a guarantee of what you can put. Like, let's say that you gave him like 7 million, saved 3 there. What are really you gonna do for 3 million that you can't still do? Like, what can you accomplish that you can't still accomplish now?
I
With
think that
extra
money
little
could
bit?
go to a safety or something that, we're not quite sure what's going to be here and what's not. That's all. Like that's what I was thinking as far as shuffling around a little bit more to the defense. Like I understand Jalen Hurts is going to get his money regardless, and then saving money here and there is not really going to matter on a 1-year deal. But I think that money spreading elsewhere. Like I don't know. I that's and someone a little bit younger too. That's kind of
Yeah, I mean, but that's what the drafts for. Like, let's not beat around the bush. They're absolutely going D line. I think twice at least in this draft. I think they're going to end up trading for a few more picks. I could see them easily trading down from 30, recouping some more picks. So, Cansey's a guy that we know that they like. Carter, if he falls, obviously is someone that they're going to potentially be interested in. There's a plethora of other defensive line, not to mention the edge prospects, because especially in the first 2 rounds, there's a lot of good edge rushers in this draft. There's going to be that opportunity there. I absolutely hear you on a safety, especially with how the Chauncey Gardner-Johnson discussions or lack thereof are looking right now. But like for me, if they're going to go out and get like a John Johnson, or let's not forget the fact that there's going to be some cap casualties between now and the start of camp. Like I think that there is going to be an answer out there. They're not just going to roll out there with Kavon and Reed Blankenship. Like that's the thing is like we still need to see who it is, but I think that there's like a happy medium here, and bringing back Fletch again, like someone who, like, let's not forget about what he brings to the locker room. Like I'm not saying that he's not Graham, he's not B-Doc, obviously, but again, this is a historic Eagle. This is someone who is still, he may not be what he once was, but he's not just like sitting around there getting beat left and right. As long as you have him in a rotation, he still comes out hard and fierce, So like there is a role for Fletcher Cox to have. Unfortunately, for someone so accomplished as him, like you have to pay a little more. He's not quite in that Ndamukong part of his career yet. He's probably a couple years away from it, and maybe then you're talking about bringing him in on like a $3 million deal, something like that. But for now, like he's coming off a 7-sack season in a limited role. I think 10 is about, especially considering he got more money elsewhere, like that's about what you can expect for a 7-sack production level player who also is at least better against the run compared to some of your other answers defensively. So it's a lot of money. I'm not saying it's a lot of money, but you have to, pay him for what he's done as well as what you expect him to do as part of the catch-22 of it all.
How much was he being offered elsewhere?
14.
Really?
Cleveland?
Look, I know that the way I
New York.
react, that it's like he doesn't deserve it, but like he does deserve the money, like Zach was saying. But 14's gross. If I think 10's
Big Blue,
a lot.
No, apparently the Jets offered him 14 mil, 1 year, 14 mil.
Oh my gosh,
that's a lot, dude.
Okay.
And it speaks volumes, right? Like he obviously could have went over there and then been a part of whatever circus is gonna happen with Aaron Rodgers, right?
Yeah,
but
I was about to say.
At the end of the day, like he chose Philly, and these guys, like these guys are so bought into what's going on in Philadelphia right now, right? They're bought into the idea like Jalen Hurts is a Patrick Mahomes-esque quarterback. Like he as long as he's healthy, you have your championship window completely open. And that's what these guys are thinking, right? But on the other hand, like Zach said, like you don't have Javon Hargrave no more. You have Jordan Davis. You don't know what you have in Jordan Davis yet. You have Milton Williams, who's been on the team for a couple of years. You don't know what you really have in him. And they're most likely going to go high on defensive line in the draft. So I think keeping Fletcher Cox with this team, not even from a leadership standpoint, but just from depth-wise, like it was the smartest thing to do. But also leadership standpoint, like when they lost in New Orleans, and when I was in the locker room, like Fletcher was like standing tall, like ready to talk to anybody about what's going on, and it just showed like this team's on a different level than they were after 2017. Like this is actually a team to be proud of, and I think Fletcher Cox is part of the nucleus of it.
When you were in that locker room after the Saints game, did it really feel like they were really like humdrum kind of spirits about like the loss? I mean, you lose a game and no one wants to do it, but at the same time, it's like, and I know that NFL players don't consider really the circumstances because there's no excuses, just go out there and win the game. But like in that game, I remember watching against the Saints. I'm like, I could see the Eagles losing a game with Minshew starting, with not really having our starters, or we had our starters, but it wasn't healthy. It wasn't like a healthy team. Like I can imagine like us losing that game when I was, watching it. But I'd imagine when you're sitting there talking to Cox after the game, he's sitting there talking to the media. did you get the idea that it was just like, okay, yeah, this is a loss, but we're getting Hurts back, so it's like it's whatever.
Yeah,
Is that how you kind of felt?
it was exactly that. Like everybody was ready to talk to the media, right? When I walked in, you saw Jalen Hurts like in the corner by himself. Obviously, nobody's going to talk to him at that point, right? But he was just tucked into his locker, and you could see the frustration, right? Like the guy wanted to be out there because he knew that the team could win if he was out there. But everybody was ready to speak to media in a very respectful manner. Like this team, they held themselves accountable, and they didn't care about how people viewed them on the outside. It was about everything inside for them.
Yeah, that makes a ton of sense. Like that's sort of even to an extreme opposite, about how my Flyers are going and how that whole thing is going. Like, yeah, no, I mean that's kind of how that locker room feels. So I was just wanting to compare and contrast because literally, like, both opposite ends of the spectrum in sports right now with the Eagles and the state of Flyers. So
Yeah, I agree with that. A move that this is probably my favorite move of the offseason. And if you guys judge me, I don't blame you. But I love the fact that the Eagles went for Greedy Williams.
I thought you were
Like,
going to say Mariota.
no,
I really did
no.
too. I really did too.
No, I forgot about Mariota for a second, but Greedy Williams, like the Eagles got what is he, 25, 26 years old?
Yeah, he's still young.
He has, still young, has all the potential in the world, hasn't been able to stay healthy. We know last year Philadelphia, like the key thing was they were able to keep a lot of guys healthy. If there was an injury, it was an injury that kept them out for a season, whatever case may be. Like Nick Sirianni has everything down packed as far as health, right? But this guy has all the talent in the world. Not only that, but you're putting him in the room with Darius Slay and James Bradbury for another 2 years, right? Say you extend them after the season because you see the promise in him, right? He's going to learn from these guys, and he's going to be starting at some point, right? And he's going to be that steal. I just love the way the Eagles are building right now because they're building from a standpoint where, like, we want to win, but we also need to make sure we have insurance just in case, right? We need to make sure we have insurance just in case we release Slay next year. Like, you have Greedy Williams who could possibly start. I really love this signing a lot. I think this was a home run signing. As far as Marcus Mariota, I like it. It was a good move. It was a great way to troll Chip Kelly. You also do have a versatile quarterback that can run. I think he ran for like 400 something yards last season. And he could run this offense, right? He could run the RPO at ease. Like you're not losing anything except for the arm talent. But you're getting these guys on the cheap. Like I can't really even complain. Like these deals are extremely cheap.
How much did Minshew make last year? Like 10? But he made something like kind of absurd, I thought.
No, he was on the last year of his rookie deal, wasn't he? So he was like less than $1 million.
Oh, I thought okay. So was his whole wait? What was it?
What was rookie contract?
What was his term in Philly? Yeah. Like what was his contract in Philly?
He was traded, so it was just the last year of his.
So it was just what was left over. Okay,
exactly.
Yeah, okay. I thought for whatever reason he was getting paid like a decent amount, what's the dude?
Oh, he got 2.5.
Oh, like a Chase Daniels or
no, like the Flynn guy from like way back in the day. Yeah. Like I thought he was getting paid. Like, why is he getting paid that much to back up? Yeah, that definitely was under.
Backups make a pretty penny. We've seen that around the league even this year. Like backups are still making money and. What did Mariota come in at? What's his?
I think it was 5 with a high of 8, right?
That's honestly not bad. Like, comparatively, I mean, when you look at some of these, Mike White got what 10? Like,
I don't understand.
And he's still like pretty unproven. Obviously he had a good season last year, but we still don't really know, what Mike White is. So it's backup quarterbacks can make a pretty good chunk of change. So that's why you got to hope that you don't really need one, but always be prepared to have one.
Right.
How much was Nick making here? He was making a chunky deal, right? No,
he wasn't making much. I remember hearing that.
That man deserves the moon. You can't give him enough.
So the Eagles got Marcus Mariota, and now we're waiting, right? We're sitting and waiting. Let's talk about it, guys. The topic of discussion: Chauncey Gardner-Johnson. Eagles traded for him right before the season started. He was a stud when he was playing. Got injured a little bit, like 3/4 of the way through the season. Still led the league in interceptions or tied for interceptions. The market is not where you want it to be, right? Jesse Bates, a lot of people value him more to be a traditional safety than CJ, right? And everybody below Jesse Bates has been getting these very, very, very cheap deals. We know there's an offer on the table from the Eagles. Apparently, it doesn't look like it's enough because disrespect is real, according to CJ, whether that's the Eagles or somebody else. How do you guys feel about this? I want to get your opinions first before I dive into this because I know my opinion is not going to be very fan favorite.
I mean, I think we were talking about a little bit before, and you and I was kind of asking around, like, what have you guys heard more recently? And you were telling me the social media aspect of it, where it's like the emojis everywhere, which I already hate because I don't understand them. But yeah, just sign. I know from a fan perspective, which is absolutely like, just sign the contract. You're going to get a ton of money, like regardless. Like Philadelphia wants to keep you here. It's kind of your market. It's kind of how it is how it feels. Like you have to pay the man his money because of all the accolades you just said. So just come to an agreement with Philadelphia. I mean, if you run it, we have most of the defense that's relatively the same. You're the missing link. Come back to Philadelphia, and if you have a contract elsewhere, just realize that Philadelphia has pretty much assembled the troops again. It wouldn't be that hard to make a run for another Super Bowl appearance. So I think if he just decided if he wants to compete, he wants to get paid, I almost think to me it's a no-brainer. Like, just come to Philadelphia.
Mm-hmm.
And that's my pitch.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, it really looks like that it didn't work out the way that he thought it would, which is, kind of a shame for him. I do think part of it is, his reaction is that Philadelphia is not offering what he is expecting or, deems deserving of. And I do think that other teams are struggling in that same way. We've seen the Bengals, continue to add high-priced free agents, in spite of trying to add, Chauncey Gardner as well. So, I mean, at a certain point, everyone's going to kind of be like, so do we keep on trying to pursue him or do we go after John Johnson? Do we go after Adrian Amos? Like, do we pivot to one of these other side guys? Hey, Rodney McLeod wasn't that bad last year. Stuff like that. Like, that's going to become part of the conversation at a certain point. So as far as the, hey, sign the contract right now, like, part of that is like, yeah, from an Eagles fan perspective, like, hey, just come back to Philadelphia. You're going to be able to not only make close to as much money here as anywhere else, but in addition to that, you're familiar with the city. The city loves you. You were just in the Super Bowl. You know that we're going back at least for a playoff run next year. Like, if the Eagles, I think it would shock everybody if Philadelphia did not at least make the playoffs, even with the tougher schedule next year. In addition to that, this is a really great secondary group. And I mean that, like, not only from a talent perspective, but like just the personalities of Slay and Bradbury, Vontae Maddox, CJ, GJ in there as well. Like, that's just a really great group of guys. Like, you wouldn't want to be welcomed back with open arms into that, into that situation. And one where you can hopefully now have more of a playmaking role, which is kind of more your own MO. Like, it just seems like the perfect opportunity for him. So maybe at some point they'll hit a price point that works for everybody, but it's just not, the market's just not what he expected. And that's just kind of the reality of the situation.
Yeah, I kind of am very curious to see, if he's saying he feels disrespected because of what Philadelphia is offering him. Well, what are the other offers and why haven't you signed yet? Because then it kind of goes back to the same sort of way that I projected the Slay thing with Howie. It's like, I don't think Howie's going to budge because he didn't do it with Slay. So what are you getting elsewhere? What are the offers that you're getting? And honestly, feel so disrespected. Why haven't you signed elsewhere yet?
Well, I think that's kind of the brilliance behind Howie's plan, because he's done that with several guys, right? So Slay, Bradbury, he did it with as well.
Right.
You look for a trade, look for a free agent landing spot, like whatever the situation calls for. But, see what they're saying. Give us a chance to have a conversation before you make a decision, and we'll go from there. And it clearly worked with Bradbury. It clearly worked with Slay. The next domino is CJ GJ, like, and that, just waiting for it to happen. But at a certain point, I still believe it will happen. It's just a matter of everybody has to, you know, get a little bit, of leeway in their current negotiating, and that'll happen as we get further into the offseason. Like, I don't think this is going to happen within the next week. This may not happen within the next 2 weeks. Like, this is something that could go in until just about all his other options are out of money. This could keep on going on. So if Cincinnati keeps on spending the way they have, maybe this ends up playing back into the Eagles' favor sooner rather than later. But there's no guarantee that this is going to be solved come Monday.
We could always get Marcus Allen too. He's an option from the '90s. He's out there. He's very experienced. He knows how to play. What can I say?
Yeah, good veteran presence. Yep.
From Pittsburgh. There's so many Marcus Allens. I don't know, but you know who
another option too. I was going to say another option too, Brian. You really were in favor of adding Jalen Mills back to the. I was saying before the pod that you're a big Jalen Mills fan.
Absolutely not.
Bring him back.
Absolutely. Bring him back, listen, don't you dare bring that guy back to Philly. And it's not a disrespect to Jalen, right? I'm glad he plays safety, but I don't want him playing safety here. Here's my thing.
Funny because what about Keanu Neal? Remember that guy who
he didn't convert to linebacker?
He need the ball.
Yeah, he's basically like.
He was supposed to have that.
When you talk about a box safety, like that's an understatement for Keanu Neal. Like that man, like is basically a linebacker at this point.
He was supposed to intercept that pass, and it bounced off his knee right into Torrey Smith's hands on the way to the Super Bowl.
We're very thankful for that. But my thing with the CJ deal, right?
Eagles legend Keanu Neal.
Yeah,
I hate how prolonged this is going, right? Because you saw James sign right away, right? He let the team know the market. They signed him right away. Darius, he let obviously they ventured out. They looked at trade options, wasn't there, and they signed him right away. If you see on paper what this team is, like, here's my issue, right? To me, at least, this team pours out win first mentality. Let's win, right? Where does CJ stand on that? Does CJ Garner truly want to be on a winning team, or does he want to get paid like he's on a winning team? Because to be honest, if you want to be on a winning team, you understand the parameters of what's going on. You understand that Jalen Hurts is due for probably the largest contract in Eagles history, right? You understand that the Eagles are also paying A.J. Brown quite a bit. They're also paying James Bradbury, Darius Slay. They're paying a lot of guys quite a lot of money. So if you understand that, you got to look at it from perspective, like, why? I don't know. Like it just, I guess it's pissing me off a little bit because of how long this is going. Like, why prolong it? Why cause yourself an issue to be so stressed going into the market, knowing that your market is not there, hoping that somehow, some way, some wild random team offers you a boatload of money just so you can say yes.
No, it's just like what you were saying. Do you want to get paid? Do you want to compete? Why not both? So
exactly. And Sirianni and him had that relationship. Like, you have a wild relationship here. Unless Sean Payton is dangling, a wild 1-year deal for him to prove it on some BS just to get him over there and prove a point that he's Sean Payton, then I get it. But the internal struggle shouldn't be that much. If you went to the Super Bowl last season, you never went to the Super Bowl with the Saints. You're not going to go to the Super Bowl with the Broncos. I promise you that. And not only that, but like, you were part of, like Zach said, the best secondary in the league. Still the best secondary in the league. And they're just adding pieces to it. They're making your life easier. And on the other spectrum, I feel like it's delaying other deals where, like, I don't think the Eagles are going to go with Reed Blankenship as a starter. I think they're going to go for Adrian Amos or John Johnson, but they got to figure out their other safety first.
I can't imagine wanting to even, entertain the idea of, like, I can either return to a team where Jalen Hurts is the leader, or I can – may possibly decide to go and play for a team that's not going to compete because there's a high potential that Andy Dalton could be the leader. You know what I mean? So it's just like, it is a matter of like, okay, dude, I couldn't imagine being a professional athlete and wanting to go to a place that's not going to get me in the playoffs. Like it's, I don't know, man. It's frustrating. It's the same frustrations I have that you have, Brian.
Regardless, you're going to be rich, right? Like, so
yes,
you're still rich one way or another, right?
And you're playing football.
Why not be rich and a winner? Like, why be rich and just end up on the Browns, just drying your career away?
Yeah, well, I
Sorry.
mean, we have to think about what other potential teams could be out there trying to bring Chauncey Gardner-Johnson aboard. Like,
So what do you think his market
we've
is?
heard the Bengals rumors, and listen, it should be what Bates is, but it's clearly not. Like, that's the thing. He's younger. He's been about as productive as Bates. You would think that it'd be about the same. I think that this is the kind of situation that ends in a 1 year deal, just because the market is not there. I think part of the reason the market's not there is in part because of the injury he sustained last year. So if he can take the 1 year deal, play the full year healthy, play at a high level once again, then I think he comes back and he can get a Bates type of deal. We'll see exactly what happens in the end, but it's you also like in football, like it's so hard to argue against a guy wanting to get paid because
And
we know how
I get
unfair
that.
this league is to the players so
Pretty
often.
much
Yeah,
any
I
sport.
super
Yeah.
get it. So,
But at
so
the
forgive
same
my rant for
time,
being
like
naive a little bit.
you do want to have that winning mentality. Like you want
Mhm.
to have that winning mentality. Don't get me wrong, but you're not a loser for providing for your family for like the
Of
long. And
course
I'm not
not.
saying
Yeah.
you're saying that either, but like you're not a loser for providing for your family for by getting like $5 extra million for them for their lifetime. Like so it's I mean, we'll see what ends up happening. Like my big thing is as long as he doesn't take like a 1 year deal like with the Giants or the Cowboys or something like that. And if he goes down to 1 year, I think he comes back to Philadelphia. Because what better place to showcase your talent than a team that's starving for safety depth and starting safeties, mind you, and
Mhm.
that will play on, have a good chance rather to play on the biggest stage yet again this upcoming season. So I do think it ends with him in Philadelphia. I do think it ends on a 1 year deal. Maybe we get some guaranteed money bumped up. Who knows? But that's probably the
Do you
way I
think?
see this shaking out.
Do you think that's what it is the guaranteed money? Because I know that was a big thing with Slay, right? Like Slay wanted that guaranteed money.
It's a huge thing.
I
Yeah.
mean, every player wants guaranteed money, and after the Deshaun Watson thing,
Yeah.
there's more, and now Lamar Jackson, too, is another factor that you have to have in the equation, and it's quickly moving from like, so the NFL, like, it was so rare to give out fully guaranteed deals, right? And so it starts, and I think Kirk Cousins had the first fully guaranteed, at least like
Yeah.
for a
For
large
some
deal.
reason, people overlook that.
Um,
He's had 2 fully guaranteed deals already with the Vikings, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, and it hasn't worked out well, I would say, with the Vikings just because of his low ceiling. But moving past that, Kirk Cousins fully guaranteed deal, Deshaun Watson fully guaranteed deal, which they've already adjusted this past offseason, like because it just shows like it's so hard to make these type of contracts and have breathing room to operate as a team,
Did you see
especially
what
when you're
he's due
working
over
with
the
a
next 3
quarterback.
years?
But no, I haven't seen it. What's the number right now?
I don't know how accurate the report is, right? But apparently it was like 64 mil for the next 3 years.
There's got to be some Howie-esque plan to stretch that
Yeah.
out over the next
Like Andrew Berry has to be doing
that
something
you got to
wild
be
over
doing
there.
it like a mortgage, like put that over 30 years or something like that. Like that's the only way I see that
You
work.
got
Bobby
these like
Bo-
you
Bobby
got these
Bonilla
like
deal?
random
You
years
got to
that
get the
like
Bobby
don't really
Bonilla
pay.
deal. Exactly. We're going to be talking about the Deshaun Watson deal, 20 years from now. Like, oh, there's still another 20 years to go. This is amazing. But no, it's like, so we've already seen that spill over from the quarterback position, the most important position in sports. So logically, you would think the one that would be the most likely to have a guaranteed contract from a football perspective. Now you're talking about corners in Darius Slay wanting guaranteed contracts. Now you're talking about potentially safeties, which I haven't heard this specifically about Chauncey Gardner-Johnson, but wanting guaranteed contracts. So, I mean, the guaranteed money has always been a conversation point, like how much of it to be guaranteed. I don't know that he's looking for a fully guaranteed deal. More so, what I'm saying is, as opposed to a deal that would have X amount of dollars in guaranteed in the first year over 3 years, maybe it's a 1 year deal that has X amount plus 2 million guaranteed first year, just a small bump for that first season, that loan season, I should say, just to give the incentive to like, all right, let's get it over with. We'll give you an extra 2 million guaranteed. We'll do it over 1 year. Just come on back and play for us next year, and then nice, quick, simple, and then we go through this hell again in 2024. Like that's how I see this happening.
And
I
I
was going
don't
to go
disagree
back
with that.
onto the topic of the Bobby Bonilla contracts.
Listen,
Um,
don't you start on me because one, I'm Puerto Rican, right? Two,
well, I
Edwin
said
Diaz
Bonilla, so
was
I nailed
Twitter's.
it. So I rolled the L's or whatever I was supposed to do in college. They told me to do, but no. Go back to the Bobby Bonilla contract. Is like,
Bro, why?
because I found the most money laundering contract I think on the Saints right now, and it's dude Taysom Hill. There's no way they're not sending money. There's no way that New Orleans Saints and Sean Payton and everybody involved is not sending money to Sweden or whatever. This is ridiculous.
Some
Like,
offshore account.
yeah, there's no way, dude. Like this, they had a 3 year, and there's a potential out after 2023, but they can cut them right now, and then so it's like a 7 year. It's like a 7 year deal, right? But like 24, 25, 26, 27 doesn't exist. Like, dude, that is. He was like, "Hey, we're gonna sign you to a 7 year deal. You get paid for 2." Like,
It's gonna be iffy.
I understand that's the way that you maneuver around the cap. But when I saw that contract, I was like, "What is he really signing for then?" If you're telling me that you're going to pay me $30 million, but you can cut me after you pay me 2, so you're paying me $2 million. That's what the deal is.
And I feel like that's to allude what Nick said earlier, like that's just how the NFL is, right? Like these guys are not getting paid what their worth is. And forgive me for sounding too much like a fan for the CJ Gardner Johnson stuff, right? But my thing about the whole CJ Gardner Johnson stuff, I think was irritating me the most is the social media aspect of it. It's the emoji
Oh, for
tweets,
sure.
it's the blatant like disrespect tweets. Like, dude, keep it all in house. Like, when you sign it. If you don't sign, don't say nothing. Like you're gonna be looked at differently than you should be, in my perspective. Show the maturity of just keeping it in house and just doing your thing. Like let everything play out, however it's gonna play out, and just call it a day. But I do feel like this deal could be delaying a lot of things for Philly at the safety position,
Yeah.
and that's risky. That's really risky right now. Like you invest in your cornerbacks, great, that's good. You got your running back, cool, great. You still need a third wide receiver. I'm still not sold on Quez as much as he wants to tweet out. You still need something to figure out right guard if it's not Cam Jurgens, and like you need defensive line help at the end of the day. Like
You know
there's
who's
a lot.
available receiver? Aguilar.
I asked.
Don't
Did
say
I ask
that.
about that
Don't
in the last
no.
podcast? Why not? Like he's a
I
good
think
slot
we
player.
all know why not. I don't even think that he would come here. I think he would take less money to go elsewhere than coming back to Philly.
Yeah, it's a lot of torture
I
over
just
here.
really don't see it.
So we talked about all the signings, right? We talked about the CJ Gardner Johnson issue. Out of the losses, right? Like I want to get your opinion on this because according to national media, the Eagles lost a lot of key players. Which, in all honesty, we lost probably 2 key players and one starter that is a need now. Marcus Epps goes with the Raiders. Javon Hargrave signs a wild deal with the 49ers, but I'm still not afraid of them. TJ Edwards goes back to the Bears on a wild discount. Kaiser White goes to the Cardinals. Like, out of these losses, what do you feel like is the most detrimental one that is going to be hard to replace instantly?
TJ, because
Okay.
that's a a guy that he used a workload as far as the linebackers in terms of tackling, and the Eagles don't have sure tacklers because we just mentioned Marcus Epps, and like how that was last year, and
Yeah.
I liked Kaiser White a ton, but between the two linebackers, I would go TJ. I guess you can argue that Hargrave is a giant impact because we were talking about like, well, what do you really do as far as rotating depth at defensive tackle? And we had to have a ton kind of picked up last year with Joseph and Sue. So in that sense, no, I'm going to still roll with the TJ Edwards because to me, you're still looking for a linebacker as well. Like I think it's as impactful as maybe Hargrave going.
Your music.
Appreciate it. So again, as I was saying, like Hargrave, thank you for your service. Great, hell of a pass rusher, honestly.
Mm.
I do not want to pay. It's like paying a one-way NBA player And it's the good side. He's offensive. He's a pass rusher, but at the same time, it's like you're giving him like star money, and he can't stop the run. Like that is problematic to me. So I don't really miss that, and I'm confident in the ability to find more line depth. Like for instance, like there's Jordan Davis. I think is going to have a big year next year. It may not be 11 sacks big because that's just not his game. But I think he's going to establish himself as one of the up and coming defensive tackles in the NFL. In addition to that, like there's already guys on this roster. Milton Williams, we've talked about a little bit. I'm a more than Tuipulotu guy, always have been. So I think that in a reserve role that he still has value that he can add here. I wouldn't be surprised, for instance, if we brought back a veteran like or specifically Ndamukong Suh, because he fit kind of like a glove.
Yeah,
when he was here in Philly. Like, so that's something like Linval Joseph. I think probably that is over with. Injury aside, I think that's probably over and done with. But if Ndamukong Suh comes back on like a 1-year deal, I wouldn't be surprised at all.
I almost got botched. Is Ndamukong Suh for a defensive tackle right now? Like he's on the older edge of things, but he's always a player that you wanted on your team. You hated.
Oh, for sure.
Right, but you always wanted him
on your team. Yeah.
So what I'm going to say is wild because I look at defensive tackles kind of really like more specifically for the Eagles to kind of be like the quarterback of the defense because defensive tackles, like defensive line, has always in my mind been the most important part of the Eagles defense. Yeah. Is Suh as important as like I don't know a team that needs a quarterback like Tom Brady is available? Like, would you go if you needed a quarterback and you picked up Tom Brady? You're like, oh, that's the guy I could probably whittle away a defense because he's so smart, he's so cunning in his position. Is Suh that kind of guy, but on defensive tackle, where like you're looking for a leader on the defense, you're looking for a guy that can be a change of pace, but as a veteran leadership type of deal. Like not in terms of greatness, obviously.
I mean, it's really tough to do that between the quarterback and any other position. I think that one app comparison, that you can have, and this is, not to praise the Cowboys, but they added T.Y. Hilton last year, and he is clearly past his prime, but he made some pretty big plays for the Cowboys last year. Like
one against Philly too.
Against Philly too. Like there are veteran players who I guess you could say that it is similar to that Tom Brady addition that you were speaking of. It's just that the scale is different.
I'm talking about like to make that kind of comparison in this day and age, you gotta talk about guys that are like I don't know how old he is offhand, but let's just in the NHL you have like 35 plus contracts specifically.
Yeah.
So like those kind of older veterans, like there's a weird echelon of like only these guys, and I really think that Suh is a guy that can shape a team in that age range.
I think so too. The difference between that and a quarterback is that like Tom would be out there every offensive play, whereas like Suh would be on a rotation. But yeah, there definitely is that spot in the NFL, and I think Suh is one of those prime candidates. You see that even in the NBA sometimes. Where especially like on the buyout market, you'll see it often, guys who are signing for the vet minimum, even though they probably could garner more, from elsewhere. And they certainly play well enough to do so. But, that definitely is like an archetype, as it were. And I think that Suh definitely fits that mold. So
it's basically
and I think that Philadelphia could be looking at even more of those type of players going forward. I think that's part of the Jalen Hurts effect. And
I wouldn't even be surprised if they brought back Robert Quinn. Honestly,
no, I wouldn't. Like if he's finally healthy, like a 1-year prove-it deal, sure, absolutely, go for it.
And that scheme of Desai's again, where he had that monster season.
Yeah. I mean, I really wouldn't be surprised if Desai was already like, hey, so what are the odds that we bring back Quinn?
Yeah, he was 36, by the way. Just looked it up.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
there's a lot of good defensive tackles on the market.
Yes, there are.
Go with your point. Like they could honestly wait to the draft, right? See if you get a Jalen Carter. See
Yeah.
if you get a Kancey, right? If you don't get none of these guys, like you're not
Yeah.
limping. You get me? Like you can add 2 defensive tackles that are
Exactly.
30 years old, 36 years old, 27 years old, because there's a lot of good guys on the market still.
Yeah.
So I feel like that's the way Philly's gonna roll. In that perspective, right?
For sure.
Even at defensive end, because I think they're lacking depth there. Is Barnett still a part of the team, or?
Let me just double check because I don't foresee him being like I don't think he is.
Because
is a good question,
Yannick
though.
Ngakoue is still on the free agent market, and that would be a
that's
solid
the name
move.
to watch. I think that's like the top.
That would be a solid move. But again, like I guess this is me not knowing what's going on within the organization, right? How much of all these moves is the lingering of like the delay of all these moves is the lingering effect of what's going on with CJ? Like how much is this being delayed
I mean,
because of his
that's
contract?
very well a possibility.
It's got to be a decent amount.
So Barnett is still with the Birds.
Okay. So you have depth per se. Like he's not gonna play a lot, right? But he'll be there to spell Josh Sweat.
Yeah, he's coming off an injury too, so you're gonna want to load that depth in any way that you can, basically. But
Barnett's in the Taysom Hill part of his contract. So
yeah,
I'll put it like that.
Yeah,
the new Bobby Bonilla.
You can Bobby Bonilla to Eric Barnett right now if you wanted to.
Has Frank Clark landed anywhere yet?
No, that's another very, very like if you want championship
right
experience, that's the guy right there. 32 years old, I think he is. So that would be a solid move as well.
I mean, Frank Clark's out there. You have Calais Campbell, somebody who a lot of people have already mentioned with the Eagles.
That would be great.
Just with that Baltimore connection, like Calais Campbell definitely is someone to keep an eye on. Like, and I think those are more so the names, not so much a Jadeveon Clowney, who I don't even know what I don't know if a team's going to go after this year.
I don't even know what he's done in the past 2 or 3 years, honestly. Besides Carson Wentz, there's no production on that guy.
Now that you just brought up that magic word, do you think he starts on any quarterback starving team forever again, and if he doesn't, what team signs him as a backup quarterback? Carson Wentz.
Forgive me for asking this, if we're even considering this, but
he's 30 years old. He's 30 years old.
Does Miami have a backup quarterback in place?
Yeah, they signed Mike White.
They're the ones that signed Mike White. Okay.
Yeah,
I don't think Carson Wentz really. I don't think he touches the field as a starter again, honestly.
Dang. I mean, you're going to get halfway through the season. There's going to be some quarterback starved team that, because everybody does this. Everybody goes halfway through the season.
I mean, if Ryan Tannehill goes down, Malik Waynes doesn't really look like the answer.
But the issue is, nobody knows what you're getting out of Wentz anymore. There's no.
No, it's up and down. I mean, we're mostly down, but
Yeah.
It's
nobody knows.
It's insane that he went from his trajectory wasn't like a smooth decline. It was just here we go, and there it is, right there.
I mean, that tells you that injuries played a major role on it.
Yeah, it did. And it took all the confidence out of him. He couldn't play the way that he wanted to, pretty much. And we kind of knew that. I don't know, but we were also that obviously the fans, the team, wanted him to get back on track. And the game the postseason where against Seattle, where he basically had his head rammed into the ground, that was it. That was it for him. After that, he played scared often, and I didn't. It's kind of sucks to see it because what you had when it started, but also thankfully the team was kind of smart enough to kind of see this whole decline and say we need Hurts now.
Yeah,
it was a smart move by the Eagles. We all judged it at that point, but it was an extremely intelligent move. But yeah, I mean, I think we have fun this Sunday morning. A little different atmosphere with some coffee and some hangovers.
Dude, it's we're getting there. We're getting there.
But yeah, I mean, the second wave of NFL free agency is kicking off this week, so definitely, all eyes are on CJ Gardner-Johnson. all eyes are on depth. It looks like the Eagles are actually going to fill a lot of holes where they're going to enter the draft where, best player available makes all the sense in the world. But yeah, until then, definitely tune in. Make sure you guys like this video as well, and definitely subscribe to the PSN account because there's a lot of good things going on. Zach has the baseline scoop. The guys from Duke by the River.
By the River.
Yeah, I
Duke
would say
River,
for some reason.
Yeah.
Duke by the River, they're actually doing extremely well on their end as well. And I heard a rumor that possibly Liam is making a return. I think Zach and I will be on the forefront of pushing that to existence.
Well, let's also not forget with spring training going on, there's also PSN's Philly podcast 11,000 and counting. So
yeah,
be sure to check that out as well.
Yep.
Yeah. And so definitely check out everything PSN. And I think Eric's working on
I'm working on a podcast. I want to start with Nate. So if you guys have been reading a lot of the Flyers content for PSN, Nate and I we were discussing the idea of doing a podcast and calling it Sell the Team. But I mean, I don't think that's changing for a lot of people for a long time. But I mean, we came up with the idea, and then like 2 days later, Fletcher was relieved of his duty, and then Briere's in. So maybe that changes a little bit. Maybe we had to come up with a different title, but Sell the Team sounds fun. But that's our Flyers podcast. Tentative starts around maybe off season because that seems like a good jumping off point. So that being said, that's all of your PSN stuff.
Yeah, so definitely guys subscribe to the channel. Like this on video. Do what you got to do. We'll be back next week. We'll relay a day and time. Maybe we do Breakfast and Birds again because I feel like
this
Tuesdays
is actually a pretty sick idea, dude.
It's actually I mean it's actually kind of relaxing too. I mean game days it's easy and smooth, right? And shout out to all of you that joined us as well because there was a lot of you guys on the channel today. But yeah, until next time, I'm Brian Cameron alongside Eric Reese, Zach Chavalella, because I keep getting it right.
That's right. And you know what else I get right? Go Birds! Flip.